Good evening and welcome to Somerset County Library's Personal Enrichment Series program online. Meyersdale is getting ready for the Maple Festival. It's that time of year, and I thought it'd be a great time to share some recipes centered around maple. So what's the Maple Festival without buckwheat pancakes? So first up, we're going to make some buckwheat pancakes. And then I'm going to share a recipe that I sort of modified and made my own. Last year, when we were in lockdown, I had a craving for chocolate and I didn't have anything in the house. And of course, there wasn't anything on the shelves in the stores. And of course, at that time, we weren't going to go out for something that wasn't really important anyhow. So I was looking around the house and trying to see if I had the ingredients for some brownies. Of course, most brownies called for baking chocolate or chocolate chips or something like that, but I didn't have any of those in the house. So I was trying to find a recipe that had the ingredients that I had in the house. And I came across this recipe for maple chocolate brownies. All it needed was cocoa powder, no chocolate chips, nothing like that. So it's like, okay, I can do that. One problem though, I didn't have any maple extract. So what I did was I substituted the sugar with maple syrup. And that gave me the nice maple flavor. I had my chocolate brownies. I was good. So I'm going to share that recipe with you as well. But first, let's take a look at A to Z food. And let me share my screen. Okay, so we're going. Okay, I'm sure. Okay, so let's take a look at A to Z Food America, and you can find this through our website. Just go to somersetcolibrary.org and click on resources. And so let's go check out maple syrup. And we learned that maple syrup is sweet sap called xylem, harvested from maple trees in a process called mapling or sugaring. Maple syrup was used by Native Americans, as is reflected in oral histories and tree markings. Native Americans introduced European settlers to the process of collecting sap from maple trees. Maple syrup is most often harvested from sugar maple, red maple, and black maple trees. Maple syrup is highly fragrant with a sweet caramel, nutty flavor. Maple syrup is rich in riboflavin and manganese and has moderate levels of zinc, calcium, and thiamine. Maple syrup is a processed product that is available year-round, but it is harvested in late winter and early spring as the trees begin to convert winter stores of starch into a sugary sap. Did you know that maple syrup consumption peaked in the United States during the American Civil War, since sugarcane production in the American South and Caribbean was underpinned by an intensive slave labor infrastructure? Consumption of maple syrup in the U.S. rose again with sugar rationing in World War II, during which time Canada surpassed the U.S. in maple syrup production. So that's a little bit about maple syrup. And let's take a look at buckwheat. Now, despite the fact that buckwheat has the term wheat in its name, buckwheat is not a wheat. And if you search for buckwheat on the A to Z Food America site, you'll get some recipes for buckwheat pancakes, blini, which is a Russian pancake, and soba noodles. I need to try to make some noodles. I've been wanting to do that. So let's take a look at what buckwheat actually is. Buckwheat is a fruit seed. So it's not a grain, it's not wheat, it's a seed. Buckwheat flour is the color of dingy cream, occasionally with a darker brown or green tint and dark specks. Buckwheat is not a wheat variety, but is related to sorrel and rhubarb. One of the earliest cultivated seeds, buckwheat was first domesticated in southern Asia around 6000 BC and spread quickly to Europe, where it was popular in colder climates because it ripens quickly. See, buckwheat has an earthy, intense, nutty flavor with a hint of bitterness. Buckwheat is an excellent source of protein, fiber, magnesium, manganese, phosphorus, niacin, riboflavin, and pantothenic acid. It's a very good source of zinc, iron, selenium, pyridoxine, thiamine, and folate. It is a good choice for those with gluten or wheat allergies because it contains no gluten. So for our gluten-free friends out there, you can have these pancakes. There's absolutely no wheat flour in them at all. At least the ones that I'm making. There are recipes out there that do call for wheat flour, but the ones that I am making do not contain any wheat flour at all. So that is a little bit about buckwheat. So let's go out to the kitchen and we'll get started. We'll see you there. Okay, so today we're starting out making some buckwheat buttermilk pancakes. And we're going to start off with 1 3/4 cups of buckwheat flour. One. And 3/4. Then we're going to add 1 1/2 teaspoons of baking powder. To that we're going to add 3/4 teaspoons of baking soda. So for the kids we have 1/2 plus 1/4 equals 3/4. Fun with fractions. Okay, then we need our kosher salt. And we just need 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And I'm going to take my whisk and make a little well in the middle here. I'm going to start adding my wet ingredients. So we have 2 large eggs. It calls for 3 tablespoons of coconut oil, but I found that coconut oil isn't good for my cholesterol, so I just use vegetable oil. Two tablespoons of honey. My honey is down to where it had crystallized, so I had to stick it in the microwave for a little bit to liquefy it again. I have my skillet on, getting warmed up. Okay, we need a teaspoon of vanilla. I love the smell of vanilla. Okay, and we need 2.5 cups of buttermilk. Measure out my buttermilk. Start mixing this. I might just go with the 2 cups. We'll see how thick it is when I finish whisking it together, or mixing it together. I think I probably had more honey than 2 tablespoons, so you'd have to adjust with the amount of liquids in the recipe. That actually looks pretty good, I think. I like my batter to be a little bit thicker to get nice thick pancakes. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to take my quarter measuring cup and go over to the stovetop and start frying up our pancakes. Okay, so I have my skillet heated up, and I'm going to take a quarter cup measure and put that in my hot pan. I like to have my batter thick, so I actually, when I was mixing it up, I used less buttermilk than what was called for, and I ended up adding a little bit more buckwheat to it. So I like it when I scoop it into the pan, I like it to pretty much stay where I have it and not run all over the place. Okay, so this side is going to cook until, see the little bubbles. Let's see if get a close up of those. It gets little bubbles that come to the surface of the pancake. And you get a whole lot of those and they start popping. That's when you know it's ready to turn over. And you can see the cakes are puffing up. Okay, give them a flip and cook them on the other side for about a minute, and we'll have our buckwheat buttermilk pancakes. So you want them just golden on the other side as well. And that looks done. Now if you're cooking for your family and you want to be able to eat all at one time, I'm on a sheet pan, stick them in the oven where they will stay warm. We don't eat them all in one setting, so I like to cool them off and then put them in a storage bag, and then I have a quick breakfast. Anytime I need to run out the door, I can grab a couple pancakes out, heat them up in the microwave for a few seconds, and I'm good to go. So just continue with the rest of your batter, cook it all up, and enjoy your buttermilk buckwheat pancakes. This recipe is maple chocolate nut brownies, and I based this one on an old recipe that I found in an old Hershey's chocolate cookbook, but I didn't have all the ingredients, so I had to modify some things. So this is actually my own take on it. Alright, so we're going to start with our wet ingredients in a small bowl. So we have 2 eggs, and to that this called for sugar, but sugar was in short supply at that time, so I used some pure maple syrup. And since I didn't have the maple extract that they called for either, I decided to just go with the maple syrup. And this is about 3/4 of a cup of maple syrup. Need 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. And we're going to blend this together. And because I'm substituting the maple syrup for the sugar, I did a little research to see how best to do that. And I think the first time I made it, I actually did use a full cup of maple syrup. And I ended up having to add a little bit more flour and cocoa powder to it to counteract the extra liquid that was in the batter. And I am using good old Pennsylvania maple syrup. I have to have the good stuff from Somerset County, right? Okay. And to that, I'm going to add 1/2 cup of melted butter or margarine. And just blend that together. butter and maple syrup just smells amazing. Okay, so I think that's all of our wet ingredients. Okay, so let me set this aside for a moment. And now we're going to put our dry ingredients together. So we have half a cup of all-purpose flour, 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. Make sure you have the powder, not the soda. That's 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. Okay, we need a quarter teaspoon of salt. Then we do 1/4 cup of baking cocoa or cocoa powder. Okay, I think that's everything except for the nuts, which we'll add in afterwards. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get this all out of the way. Mix my dry ingredients together. Now we're going to add our liquids. And we'll see if it needs any adjustments. You can see how quickly brownies from scratch come together. It's like, and then you taste how good they are. I wonder why you ever bought boxed mixed brownies. This is so easy and quick. Okay, and that looks pretty good. Okay, I chopped up some hickory nuts a friend of ours gave us. I'm going to add those to my mix. Doesn't that look good? Alright, so I'm going to grease an 8-inch baking pan. If you want to use spray, cooking spray, that's fine. I got shortening here. I'll just use that to grease my pan. Okay, I'll just pour the batter into the baking pan. And smooth it all around. All right, so we need the oven set to 350 degrees. Preheat your oven. And then we'll put this in the oven for 30 to 35 minutes or until the brownie begins to pull away from the edges. So let me get this in the oven and we'll be back when it's ready. It's been about 30 minutes and you can tell the cake's beginning to pull away from the side of the pan. That's when you know it's done. So we'll let those cool for a while and then we'll have our delicious brownies. Okay, so that is our buckwheat buttermilk pancakes and maple chocolate brownies. And hope you enjoy. Go out, get yourself some real Somerset County maple syrup. Support our local maple syrup producers and enjoy. And we'll see you next time. Good night.